Welcome to the Story Lab. I hope you enjoy this story. Let's begin. I poured another round of drinks for our friends, the clink of ice against glass a cheerful counterpoint to the laughter filling our living room. Game nights at our house had become something of a tradition over the years, a way to unwind and catch up with the people closest to us. All right, who's ready for Never Have I Ever? I asked, settling back onto the couch next to Vanessa. My wife of 10 years smiled at me, her dark hair falling in loose waves around her face. She looked beautiful tonight, as always, but there was something in her eyes I couldn't quite read. Oh, this should be good, Mark chuckled, rubbing his hands together gleefully. My oldest friend hadn't changed much since our schoolyard days, still quick with a joke and always up for a good time. His wife Rachel rolled her eyes fondly, used to his antics by now. Just remember, what happens at game night stays at game night, Julia chimed in with a wink. She worked with Vanessa in marketing and had become a regular at our get-togethers over the past year or so. Her boyfriend Daniel nodded in agreement, looking relaxed as ever. All right, I'll start, Rachel offered. Never have I ever skinny dipped? There were groans and laughs as several people took sips of their drinks. I noticed Vanessa hesitate before taking a small sip herself. That was new, she'd never mentioned skinny dipping before. The game continued, questions ranging from the silly to the slightly risque. I found myself relaxing, enjoying the easy camaraderie of good friends and good drinks. When it was Vanessa's turn, she drew a card from the stack in the center of the coffee table. Her eyes widened slightly as she read it, and I felt a flicker of unease. Never have I ever. She paused, her voice catching slightly. Never have I ever cheated on my spouse. The room went quiet for a moment. I glanced around, expecting to see mostly untouched glasses. To my shock, Vanessa lifted her drink to her lips and took a long swallow. Time seemed to slow down. I stared at her, unable to process what I was seeing. This had to be a joke, right? Some kind of misunderstanding? Whoa, plot twist. Mark's attempt at humor fell flat in the suddenly tense atmosphere. I forced a laugh, trying to play it off. Very funny, babe. You really had us going there for a second. Vanessa didn't meet my eyes. Yeah, just a joke, she mumbled, but her face was flushed and she wouldn't look at anyone directly. Julia cleared her throat. Maybe we should play something else? The rest of the night passed in a blur. I went through the motions of being a good host, but my mind was reeling. Every time I looked at Vanessa, questions crowded my thoughts. Was it really just a drunken joke? Or was there something she wasn't telling me? As our friends said their goodbyes, I caught Mark's concerned glance. He pulled me aside while Vanessa was seeing Julia and Daniel out. You okay, man? He asked quietly. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Mark squeezed my shoulder. Call me if you need anything, all right? After everyone had left, Vanessa and I cleaned up in silence. The cheerful mood from earlier in the evening had evaporated, leaving behind a heavy tension. We should get to bed, Vanessa said finally, her voice strained. It's late. I nodded, following her upstairs. As we got ready for bed, moving around each other in our familiar routine, I tried to find the words to confront her. But every time I opened my mouth, I hesitated. What if I was overreacting? What if it really had just been a stupid joke? We climbed into bed, the silence between us stretching out like a chasm. Vanessa turned away from me, curling up on her side of the bed. I stared at the ceiling, my thoughts churning. One thing was certain, something had changed tonight, and as much as I wanted to ignore it, I knew I couldn't. The seed of doubt had been planted, and I had a sinking feeling it was only going to grow. The smell of coffee pulled me from a restless sleep. For a moment, I lay there, disoriented. Then the events of the previous night came rushing back, and a knot formed in my stomach. I got up, throwing on a t-shirt and sweats before heading downstairs. Vanessa was already in the kitchen, her back to me as she poured herself a cup of coffee. Morning, I said, my voice rough from sleep. She jumped slightly, turning to face me. Oh hey, I didn't hear you come down. Her smile seemed forced, not quite reaching her eyes. Want some coffee? I nodded, watching her closely as she poured me a cup. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes suggesting she'd slept about as well as I had. Thanks, I murmured as she handed me the mug. Our fingers brushed, and I felt her tense at the contact. We stood there for a moment, the silence stretching between us. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "We need to talk about last night," I said firmly. Vanessa's shoulders slumped. "Nate, it was just a stupid game. I was drunk. I wasn't thinking clearly." "So you're saying you've never cheated on me?" I pressed, needing to hear her say it. She hesitated, and my heart sank. "Of course not," she said finally, but her voice lacked conviction. I set my coffee down, suddenly feeling sick. "Don't lie to me, Vanessa. Not now." "I'm not lying," she snapped, her defensive tone only increasing my suspicions. "God, Nate, why can't you just let this go?" "Because my wife basically admitted to cheating on me in front of all our friends." I shot back, my temper rising. "What am I supposed to think?" Vanessa's face crumpled. "It was a mistake, okay? It didn't mean anything. It was just a moment of weakness." The room seemed to tilt around me. "So you did cheat." "It was one time," she said quickly. "It won't happen again, I swear. Can we please just forget about it and move on?" I stared at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. "Forget about it? Are you serious right now? What do you want me to say, Nate?" Vanessa's voice rose in frustration. "I made a mistake. I'm sorry. What more do you want from me?" "I want the truth," I said coldly. "When? With who?" Vanessa shook her head. "It doesn't matter. It's over. It won't happen again." "It matters to me," I insisted. "I deserve to know." We went back and forth, the argument growing more heated. Vanessa alternated between defensive anger and pleading for forgiveness. But no matter how much I pushed, she refused to give me details. Finally, exhausted and disgusted, I grabbed my keys. "I need some air," I muttered, heading for the door. "Where are you going?" Vanessa called after me, panic in her voice. "Out," I replied shortly, slamming the door behind me. I drove aimlessly for a while, trying to clear my head. How had we gotten here? 10 years of marriage, and I thought I knew her. Now I felt like I was looking at a stranger. Eventually, I found myself pulling up in front of Mark and Rachel's house. Mark answered the door, taking one look at my face before ushering me inside. "Want to talk about it?" he asked, handing me a beer. I sank onto their couch. "She cheated on me," I said flatly. Mark's eyes widened. "Shit, man." Recounting the morning's confrontation, Mark listened silently, his expression growing more concerned. "What are you going to do?" he asked when I finished. I shook my head. "I don't know. I can't just forgive and forget, you know? But it's Vanessa. We've been together for so long. I can't imagine my life without her." Mark leaned forward, his expression serious. "Listen, Nate, you're my best friend, so I'm going to be straight with you. Don't let her off the hook for this. You deserve better than that." "You think I should leave her?" I asked, surprised by his vehemence. "I think you need to figure out if you can trust her again," Mark replied. "And if you can't, well, sometimes it's better to cut your losses." I nodded slowly, turning his words over in my mind. "Thanks, man. I appreciate the advice." "Anytime," Mark said, clapping me on the shoulder. "You know Rachel and I are here for you, whatever you decide." I stayed for a while longer, grateful for the distraction. But eventually, I knew I had to go home and face reality. When I walked through the door, Vanessa was waiting for me. Her eyes were red and puffy, like she'd been crying. "I thought you weren't coming back," she said softly. "I live here, don't I?" I replied, my tone harsher than I intended. Vanessa flinched. "Nate, please. Can we talk about this?" I sighed, suddenly feeling very tired. "What's there to talk about? You cheated. You broke my trust. I don't know where we go from here." "I love you," she said desperately. "It was a mistake. I swear it won't happen again. Please, just give me another chance." I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I'd loved for over a decade, the person I'd built my life around. And for the first time, I wondered if I really knew her at all. "I need time," I said finally. "I can't just forgive you overnight, Vanessa. I need to think about what I want." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Okay, whatever you need. I'll be here when you're ready to talk." I headed upstairs, needing some space. As I lay in our bed, the bed we'd shared for years, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed, and I had no idea what the future held for us now. Days turned into weeks, and life settled into an uneasy routine. Vanessa and I coexisted in the same space, but the easy intimacy we'd once shared was gone. She made efforts to reconnect, cooking my favorite meals, suggesting date nights, but I couldn't bring myself to let her in. The doubt gnawed at me constantly, poisoning every interaction. I started noticing things I'd overlooked before. How often her phone buzzed with notifications. The late nights at the office that seemed to be happening more and more frequently. The way she guarded her phone, always keeping it close. One evening, I was sitting in the living room when Vanessa came home. She looked flustered, her cheeks flushed. "Hey," she said, a bit breathlessly. "Sorry I'm late. Got caught up at work." I nodded, not bothering to reply. She hesitated for a moment, then headed upstairs. I heard the shower start running a few minutes later. I sat there, staring at nothing, when a notification sound caught my attention. Vanessa's phone was on the coffee table. She must have forgotten it in her rush to shower. For a moment, I wrestled with my conscience. This was an invasion of privacy, a betrayal of trust. But hadn't she already betrayed my trust? Before I could talk myself out of it, I grabbed the phone. To my surprise, it wasn't locked. Another red flag. Vanessa was usually hyper-vigilant about phone security. I opened her messages, my heart pounding. And there it was, in black and white. A conversation with someone named Austin Miller. As I scrolled through, my stomach churned. "Can't wait to see you later," one message read. "Same place as last time?" "Absolutely," Vanessa had replied. "I'll make up an excuse about working late." There were more flirtatious comments, inside jokes, plans for secret meetings. It was all there, laid bare before me. I heard the shower turn off and quickly put the phone back where I'd found it. My mind was reeling, trying to process what I'd just discovered. Vanessa came downstairs a few minutes later, wrapped in her robe. "I'm starving," she announced. "Want to order in?" I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I'd loved, trusted, built a life with. And in that moment, something inside me hardened. "Actually," I said, my voice calm despite the storm raging inside me, "we need to talk." Vanessa froze, sensing the shift in my tone. "Okay," she said cautiously. "What about?" "About Austin Miller," I replied, watching her face carefully. The color drained from her cheeks. What are you talking about?" "Don't," I snapped, my control slipping. "Don't you dare lie to me again. I saw the messages, Vanessa. I know everything." She made a grab for her phone, but I was faster. "Looking for this?" I asked, holding it up. "Go ahead, unlock it. Let's read those messages together, shall we?" "You went through my phone?" Vanessa's voice rose in indignation. "How could you invade my privacy like that?" I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "That's rich, coming from you. How long has this been going on, Vanessa? Weeks? Months?" She crumpled, sinking onto the couch. "It's not what you think," she said weakly. "Really? Because I think my wife has been screwing her coworker behind my back." I shot back. "Am I wrong?" Vanessa's silence was all the confirmation I needed. I felt a cold fury building inside me, unlike anything I'd ever experienced. "I want you out," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Pack your things and get out of my house." "Nate, please," Vanessa begged, tears streaming down her face. "We can work through this. I'll end it with Austin, I swear. Just give me another chance." I shook my head, unmoved by her tears. "You had your chance. You threw away 10 years of marriage for what? Some cheap thrills with a coworker? Well, I hope it was worth it." "Where am I supposed to go?" she asked, her voice small. "I don't care," I replied coldly. "Call your lover. I'm sure he'd be happy to take you in." I watched impassively as Vanessa packed a bag, her movements frantic and clumsy through her tears. As she headed for the door, she turned to me one last time. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I never meant to hurt you." I met her gaze, letting her see the full extent of my anger and pain. "Get out," I said simply. As the door closed behind her, I sank onto the couch, my head in my hands. The magnitude of what had just happened washed over me. My marriage was over. The life I'd built, the future I'd planned, all of it, gone in an instant. But as I sat there in the quiet of the house that suddenly felt too big, too empty, a new resolve began to form. Vanessa had betrayed me, had made a fool of me, and I was damned if I was going to let her get away with it. I pulled out my phone, dialing a familiar number. Mark? Yeah, it's me. Listen, I need your help with something. As I outlined my plan to my oldest friend, I felt a grim satisfaction settle over me. Vanessa and Austin thought they'd gotten away with their affair, but they had no idea what was coming. I was going to make sure they paid for every lie, every betrayal. I sat at my computer, fingers hovering over the keyboard. The screenshots of Vanessa's messages with Austin were open on the screen, damning evidence of their affair. My heart pounded as I logged into her social media accounts. Time to face the music, Vanessa, I muttered, uploading the screenshots. As I tagged friends, family, and colleagues, a satisfaction settled over me. Let everyone see who she really was. The phone rang almost immediately. I ignored it, watching as notifications flooded in. Comments of shock and disgust piled up under the post. Nate? What's going on? Mark's voice came through as I finally answered a call. Just sharing some truth, I replied coolly. Holy shit, man. She made her bed. Now she can lie in it. Another call beeped through Vanessa. I declined it, a cold smile spreading across my face. She's trying to call me, I told Mark. What are you going to do? Nothing. Let her panic. My phone buzzed incessantly with messages and missed calls. I turned it off, relishing the silence. Hours passed. I packed methodically, knowing Vanessa would come home eventually. Sure enough, I heard her car screech into the driveway. The front door slammed open. Nate, what have you done? I emerged from the bedroom, suitcase in hand. Vanessa stood there, wild-eyed and disheveled. Oh good, you're home, I said calmly. I was worried I'd miss you. Miss me? Nate, what the hell is going on? Why would you post those messages? I raised an eyebrow. I thought everyone should know the truth. Isn't honesty important in a relationship? This is insane. You've ruined everything? No, Vanessa. You ruined everything when you decided to cheat. She lunged for me, tears streaming down her face. Please, we can fix this. I'll do anything. I stepped back, avoiding her grasp. There's nothing to fix. We're done. You can't just leave. Watch me. As I moved towards the door, Vanessa blocked my path. I'm sorry, okay? I made a mistake. Please, don't do this. A mistake? I laughed bitterly. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk. You had an affair, Vanessa. You lied to my face for months. It didn't mean anything, she pleaded. Austin was just... Don't. I cut her off. I don't want to hear his name. Fine, but please, can we talk about this? You're throwing away 10 years of marriage. I met her gaze coldly. No, you threw it away. I'm just taking out the trash. Vanessa recoiled as if I'd slapped her. How can you be so cruel? Cruel? You want to talk about cruel? My voice rose. Cruel is betraying someone who loved and trusted you. Cruel is making a fool out of your husband. Don't you dare talk to me about cruelty. What do you want from me? She sobbed. I said I'm sorry. I want you to live with the consequences of your actions, I replied. I want everyone to see you for who you really are. And what about you? Vanessa shot back. You think people will side with you after this? You've humiliated me publicly. I shrugged. Maybe, but at least I can look at myself in the mirror. This isn't you, Nate. You're not vindictive like this. You're right. The old Nate wouldn't do this. But the old Nate died the moment he saw those messages. I pushed past her, heading for the door. Vanessa grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. Don't leave. Please, I'm begging you. For a moment, I hesitated. Then I remembered the casual way she'd lied to me, planned her rendezvous with Austin. My resolve hardened. Goodbye, Vanessa. I shook off her grip and walked out, ignoring her cries behind me. As I drove away, my phone buzzed with a text from Mark. You okay? Need a place to crash? I typed back quickly, I'm good. Thanks, man. As I navigated the familiar streets, now feeling somehow foreign, a weight lifted from my shoulders. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. The law office of Lila Chong was sleek and imposing, much like the woman herself. She regarded me coolly over steepled fingers. "So, Mr. Richards, you want a divorce?" "Yes," I replied firmly, "and I want to make sure I come out on top." A predatory smile spread across Lila's face. "Well, you've come to the right place. Tell me everything." I laid out the whole sordid tale: the affair, the public exposure, Vanessa's attempts at reconciliation. Lila listened intently, occasionally jotting notes. "You've given me a lot to work with," she said when I finished. "The infidelity alone puts us in a strong position. Add in the potential misuse of company resources for their trysts. We can make this very uncomfortable for your wife." "Good," I said. "She deserves it." Lila leaned forward. "Mr. Richards, I need to ask. Divorce can get ugly, especially when emotions are running high." I met her gaze steadily. "I want her to pay for what she did." "All right then, let's get started." Over the next few weeks, Lila proved her reputation as a shark in the courtroom. She dug into every aspect of Vanessa's affair, leaving no stone unturned. Vanessa, for her part, vacillated between pleading for reconciliation and lashing out in anger. Her calls and texts became a constant barrage. "Nate, please, can we just talk?" Her latest voicemail begged. "I know I messed up, but I love you. We can work through this." I deleted it without replying. Let her stew in her own guilt. As we prepared for another meeting with Lila, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello? Is this Nathaniel Richards?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, who's this?" "My name is Kelly Miller. I was Austin's wife." My breath caught. "Oh, I see. I wanted to thank you," Kelly said softly, "for exposing the affair. I had my suspicions, but—" "I'm sorry you had to find out that way," I replied, surprised by the genuine remorse in my voice. "Don't be. I needed to know the truth." She paused. "How are you holding up?" I laughed humorlessly. "About as well as can be expected." "You? Some days are better than others." "Listen, I know this is odd, but would you want to grab coffee sometime? It might help to talk to someone who understands." I hesitated, then found myself agreeing. Why not? It's not like things could get any stranger. We met at a quiet cafe the next day. Kelly was attractive in an understated way, with kind eyes and a warm smile. "So," she said as we sat down, "here we are. The Betrayed Spouses Club." I couldn't help but chuckle. Not a club I ever thought I'd join. "You and me both." Kelly stirred her coffee absently. "Can I ask, how did you know about the affair?" I recounted the fateful game night, the gradual unraveling of trust. Kelly listened intently, nodding in understanding. "It's the little things, isn't it?" she mused. "The changes you can't quite put your finger on." "Exactly. God, I feel like such an idiot for not seeing it sooner." Kelly reached out, squeezing my hand. "Hey, don't do that to yourself. They're the ones who should feel guilty, not us." I nodded, grateful for her understanding. "How about you? How did you find out?" "Your post, actually. It was quite the wake-up call." I winced. "I'm sorry about that. I wasn't thinking clearly." "No, don't apologize," Kelly insisted. "I'm glad I know. Even if it hurts, the truth is better than living a lie." We talked for hours, sharing our stories and commiserating over the shared pain of betrayal. As we parted ways, I felt lighter somehow. "We should do this again," Kelly suggested. "It's nice to talk to someone who gets it." I agreed, surprised to find myself looking forward to seeing her again. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal meetings and negotiations. Vanessa fought tooth and nail, but Lila was relentless. "We've got her on the ropes," Lila announced during one of our strategy sessions. "She's realizing how much she stands to lose." Sure enough, Vanessa's tone changed in her next attempt at contact. "Nate, please. This has gone too far," she pleaded over the phone. "Can't we just sit down and talk about this like adults?" "There's nothing to talk about," I replied coldly. "You made your choice. Now you get to live with it." You're being unreasonable. I made a mistake. I've apologized. What more do you want from me? I laughed bitterly. What do I want? I want the last few months of my life back. I want to unsee those messages. I want to go back to when I thought my wife actually loved me. I do love you, Vanessa cried. It was just a stupid fling. It didn't mean anything. If it didn't mean anything, why did you do it? I shot back. Why risk everything we built together? Her silence spoke volumes. That's what I thought, I said quietly. Goodbye, Vanessa. As I hung up, I felt a sense of finality settle over me. There was no going back now. All that was left was to see this through to the bitter end. I stared at my computer screen, finger hovering over the send button. The email to Vanessa and Austin's company HR department was loaded with evidence of their misconduct, expense reports for business trips that coincided with their affair, inappropriate use of company time and resources. You sure about this? Mark's voice came through the speakerphone. I took a deep breath. Absolutely. It's a pretty nuclear option, man. Once you do this, there's no going back. I know, but they deserve it. They thought they could have their cake and eat it too, using the company to facilitate their affair. Time to face the music. There was a pause, then Mark sighed. All right, if you're sure, I've got your back. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I hit send, watching as the email disappeared into cyberspace. It felt like lighting a fuse. Now all that was left was to wait for the explosion. I didn't have to wait long. Within hours, my phone was buzzing with notifications. Vanessa's frantic voice filled my voicemail. Nate, what have you done? The company is launching an investigation. They're talking about termination. Please call me back. We need to talk about this. I deleted the message without replying. Let her sweat it out. A text from Kelly popped up. Heard about the investigation. How are you holding up? I smiled, touched by her concern. I'm okay. It needed to be done. Want to grab dinner? Might help to talk it out. I hesitated, then agreed. Why not? It's not like I had anything better to do. We met at a quiet Italian place. Kelly looked lovely in a simple black dress, her smile warm as she greeted me. So, she said as we settled in, you've been busy. I shrugged, trying for nonchalance. Just tying up loose ends. Kelly raised an eyebrow. That's one way to put it. How does it feel? I considered the question. Honestly, it feels good. Like I'm finally taking back control. She nodded understanding. I get that. After feeling powerless for so long, it's nice to be the one calling the shots. Exactly. They thought they could just go on with their lives like nothing happened. Well, not on my watch. Our food arrived, and we fell into easy conversation. Kelly was smart and funny, with a dry wit that matched my own. For the first time in months, I found myself genuinely enjoying someone's company. As we were finishing up, my phone buzzed. It was Mark. Hey, what's up? I answered. Dude, have you seen the news? It's all over social media. I frowned. What is? Vanessa and Austin. They've been fired. The company put out a statement about ethical violations and misuse of company resources. It's a bloodbath. Good. They made their bed. Now they can lie in it. You okay? Mark asked, concern evident in his voice. I'm fine, I assured him. Better than fine, actually. I'm having dinner with Kelly. There was a pause. Kelly? As in, Austin's ex-wife Kelly? The very same. Don't worry, we're just friends. Mark said skeptically. Just be careful, all right? You're both in a vulnerable place right now. I appreciate the concern, but I'm a big boy. I can handle myself. We said our goodbyes, and I turned back to Kelly. She was watching me curiously. Everything okay? She asked. I nodded, a small smile playing on my lips. Yeah, everything's great. Actually, looks like justice is being served. Kelly's eyes widened in understanding. The investigation? Yep, they've both been fired. She let out a low whistle. Wow, that's intense. Too much? I asked, suddenly unsure. Kelly shook her head. No, not at all. They brought this on themselves. I'm just impressed, I guess. You don't do things by halves, do you? I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. Go big or go home, right? As we left the restaurant, Kelly surprised me by pulling me into a hug. I'm glad you're doing okay, she murmured. You deserve to be happy, Nate. I hugged her back, savoring the warmth of human contact. Thanks, Kelly. So do you. We parted ways, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between us. It wasn't romance, not yet, but it was possibility. And for the first time since this whole mess began, I found myself looking forward to the future. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with another text from Vanessa. I deleted it without reading it, a sense of finality settling over me. The chapter of my life with her was over. It was time to start writing a new one. The final divorce papers lay on my coffee table, a stark reminder of the end of my marriage. I stared at them, pen in hand, feeling a mix of emotions I couldn't quite name. My phone buzzed. It was Mark. Hey man, you doing okay? His voice came through, concern evident. I sighed. Yeah, I guess. Just about to sign the papers. Want me to come over? Moral support and all that. I considered for a moment. You know what? Yeah, that'd be good. Thanks, Mark. No problem. I'll bring beer. True to his word, Mark showed up 20 minutes later, six-pack in hand. He whistled as he looked at the papers. So this is it, huh? End of an era? I nodded, taking a beer. Yep. 10 years of marriage, reduced to a stack of legal documents. Mark settled on the couch next to me. How you feeling about it all? I took a long swig before answering. Honestly, relieved. It's been a long, ugly process, but it's finally over. No regrets? I shook my head firmly. None. Vanessa made her choices. Now she gets to live with the consequences. Mark raised his bottle in a mock toast. To new beginnings, then. We clinked bottles, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I picked up the pen and signed my name with a flourish. There, I said, sitting back. It's done. Mark clapped me on the shoulder. You did the right thing, Nate. Now it's time to focus on you. What's next? I shrugged. Not sure. Lila did a great job with the divorce settlement, so I'm okay financially. Might take some time off, do some traveling. Sounds good. You deserve a break after all this. We spent the rest of the evening reminiscing about old times and speculating about the future. As Mark was leaving, he paused at the door. Hey, Rachel and I are having a little get-together next weekend. Nothing fancy, just a few friends. You should come. I hesitated. I don't know, man. I'm not sure I'm up for socializing just yet. Mark rolled his eyes. Come on, it'll be good for you. Get out of this apartment, meet some new people. Who knows? You might even have fun. I chuckled. All right. I'll be there. The next week passed in a blur of finalizing divorce details and tying up loose ends. Before I knew it, it was time for Mark's gathering. I stood outside their house, feeling oddly nervous. It had been a while since I'd been in a social situation that didn't involve lawyers or angry exes. Rachel answered the door with a warm smile. Nate, so glad you could make it. Come on in. The house was filled with the buzz of conversation and laughter. I recognized a few faces from our old social circle, but there were plenty of new ones too. Nate, Mark called out, waving me over. He was standing with a woman I didn't recognize. There's someone I want you to meet. This is Emily. She just started at my firm. Emily turned, revealing a friendly face and warm brown eyes. She extended her hand with a smile. Nice to meet you, Nate. I've heard a lot about you. I shook her hand, shooting Mark a questioning look. All good things, I hope? She laughed. Mostly. Though I have to admit, your reputation as a coding wizard is a bit intimidating. I felt myself relax a bit. Don't believe everything Mark tells you. He once crashed our entire system trying to install a screensaver. Mark groaned. Are you ever going to let that go? We fell into easy conversation, Emily proving to be quick-witted and engaging. As the night wore on, I found myself genuinely enjoying her company. So, she said as we grabbed refills, Mark mentioned you're a photographer? I nodded. Amateur, but yeah, it's been a hobby of mine for years. Her eyes lit up. That's fantastic. I've always wanted to get into photography. Any tips for a complete beginner? We spent the next hour talking about cameras, composition, and lighting. Emily's enthusiasm was infectious, and I found myself getting excited about photography in a way I hadn't been in months. As the party wound down, Emily turned to me with a smile. "This was fun. We should grab coffee sometime, continue our photography chat." I felt a flutter of something I hadn't experienced in a long time. "Yeah, I'd like that." We exchanged numbers, and as I left the party, I couldn't wipe the smile off my face. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. True to my word, I started traveling, taking my camera along to capture the sights. But I also found myself looking forward to my coffee dates with Emily. We met regularly, our conversations ranging from photography to books to our shared love of obscure indie bands. It was refreshing, talking to someone who didn't know about the mess with Vanessa, who saw me as just me. One afternoon, as we were walking through a local park, cameras in hand, Emily turned to me with a serious expression. "Nate, can I ask you something?" I nodded, a bit wary. "Sure, what's up?" She bit her lip. "Mark told me a bit about what happened with your ex-wife. I hope that's okay." I felt a flash of irritation at Mark, but pushed it aside. "It's fine. What did you want to know?" Emily hesitated. I wanted to make sure you're okay. That you're not, still hung up on her or anything." I was surprised by the question, but even more surprised by how easily the answer came. "No, I'm not hung up on her. What happened with Vanessa, it was painful, yeah, but it's in the past. I've moved on." Emily's face brightened. "Good. That's good to hear." We stood there for a moment, something unspoken passing between us. Then Emily raised her camera with a grin. "Race you to the best shot of that fountain?" I laughed, raising my own camera. "You're on." As we ran towards the fountain, competing for the best angle, I felt lighter than I had in years. The pain of Vanessa's betrayal was still there, a dull ache in the background, but it no longer defined me. For the first time in a long time, I was excited about the future. And that, I realized, was the best revenge of all. Months had passed since the divorce was finalized, and life had settled into a new rhythm. I was thriving at work. My photography hobby had evolved into a small side business, and my relationship with Emily was blossoming. One sunny afternoon, I was grabbing coffee at my usual spot when a familiar voice caught my attention. "Nate, is that you?" I turned to see Julia, Vanessa's old colleague, looking hesitant and uncomfortable. "Julia," I nodded, keeping my tone neutral. "How are you?" She fidgeted with her coffee cup. I'm okay. Listen, can we talk for a minute?" Curiosity got the better of me. "Sure, I've got some time." We sat at a corner table, an awkward silence stretching between us. Finally, Julia spoke. "I wanted to apologize. For not telling you about Vanessa and Austin. I should have said something." I raised an eyebrow. "You knew?" She nodded, looking ashamed. "I suspected. There were rumors around the office, but I didn't want to believe it. Vanessa was my friend, and I didn't want to get involved." I took a sip of my coffee, considering my response. "I appreciate the apology, Julia, but why now? It's been months." Julia sighed. "I ran into Vanessa last week. She's not doing well. The scandal hit her hard. She can't find work. Most of our old friends have cut ties with her. She asked about you." I felt a flicker of something. Not quite sympathy, but not the satisfaction I might have expected either. "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That you seem to be doing well, that you've moved on." Julia hesitated. "She wanted me to ask if you'd meet with her. To talk." I shook my head firmly. "Not a chance. That chapter of my life is closed." Julia nodded, looking unsurprised. "I thought you might say that. For what it's worth, I think you're right to move on. Vanessa, she made her choices." We finished our coffees in silence, then stood to leave. "Take care, Nate," Julia said. "And I'm glad you're doing okay." I watched her go, feeling a mix of emotions I couldn't quite name. My phone buzzed with a text from Emily. "Still on for dinner tonight? I've got a surprise for you." I smiled, the encounter with Julia already fading from my mind. "Wouldn't miss it. Can't wait to see what you've got planned." That evening, as Emily and I enjoyed a home-cooked meal in her cozy apartment, she pulled out a small, wrapped package. So, remember how you mentioned wanting to try street photography? She said, eyes twinkling. I nodded, intrigued. Well, she pushed the package towards me. Open it. I unwrapped it to find a sleek, compact camera perfect for capturing candid street scenes. Emily, this is wow. Thank you, I said, genuinely touched. She beamed. I thought we could explore the city together this weekend. There's an arts festival downtown that would be perfect for trying it out. As we planned our weekend adventure, I marveled at how different my life had become. The pain of Vanessa's betrayal, once all-consuming, had faded to a distant memory. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. Nate, it's Vanessa. Please, can we talk? I know I hurt you, but I'm trying to make amends. Just give me a chance to explain. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without replying. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. Everything okay? Emily asked, noticing my distraction. I smiled, setting my phone aside. Yeah, everything's perfect. The sun was just beginning to set as Emily and I strolled through the bustling arts festival, our new cameras capturing the vibrant scenes around us. Oh, look at that, Emily exclaimed, pointing to a street performer juggling flaming batons. Get a shot of that. I laughed, raising my camera. On it, boss. As we moved through the crowd, I found myself marveling at how natural it felt, being here with Emily. There was an ease between us that I'd forgotten could exist in a relationship. Hey, Emily said softly, touching my arm. You've got that look again. I raised an eyebrow. What look? She smiled. The one where you're thinking too hard. What's on your mind? I hesitated, then decided to be honest. I ran into someone the other day, an old friend of Vanessa's. Emily's expression grew serious. Oh, how did that go? We found a quiet bench away from the main crowd, and I recounted my conversation with Julia. She told me Vanessa's struggling, I finished. Part of me feels like I should care, but you don't, Emily finished for me. I nodded, relieved she understood. Is that terrible of me? Emily shook her head firmly. No, Nate. It's not terrible. It's human. Vanessa made her choices. You're not responsible for the consequences of her actions. I let out a breath. Thanks. I guess I needed to hear that. Emily squeezed my hand. That's what I'm here for. Now, come on. I saw a booth selling those weird abstract paintings you like. As we wandered through the festival, I found myself thinking about how far I'd come. The anger and bitterness that had consumed me after discovering Vanessa's affair had faded, replaced by a sense of peace I hadn't thought possible. Later that night, as we reviewed our photos over a bottle of wine, Emily turned to me with a thoughtful expression. You know, you should do something with these photos. They're really good. I shrugged. They're just hobby shots. Emily shook her head. No, I'm serious. You've got a real talent, Nate. Have you ever thought about starting a blog or something? Sharing your work? I considered it. I don't know. I wouldn't even know where to start. Emily's eyes lit up. I could help. I've got some experience with web design. We could set up a portfolio site for you. Her enthusiasm was contagious. You know what? Let's do it. Over the next few weeks, Emily and I worked on creating my photography blog. It was more than just a showcase for my photos, though. As we built the site, I found myself wanting to share the story behind the images. What if, I said one evening as we were working on the layout, I wrote about my journey, not just the photography, but everything. The divorce, the healing process, finding myself again. Emily looked at me, surprise and admiration in her eyes. Nate, that's a great idea. Are you sure you're ready to share all that? I nodded, feeling more certain than I had in a long time. Yeah, I think I am. If it can help even one person going through something similar, it'll be worth it. The blog launched a month later. At first, it was just friends and family checking it out. But slowly, word began to spread. People connected with my story, with the raw honesty of my posts. Comments started pouring in. Thank you for sharing your story. I'm going through a divorce right now, and your words give me hope. Your journey is inspiring. It's nice to know there's light at the end of the tunnel. Your photos are beautiful, but it's your resilience that really shines through. As the blog grew, so did my confidence. I started hosting photography workshops, sharing the techniques I'd learned over the years. Emily was there every step of the way, supporting and encouraging me. One evening, as we celebrated the blog's 6-month anniversary, Emily turned to me with a serious expression. "Nate, I need to tell you something." My heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" She took a deep breath. "I got a job offer. It's a great opportunity, but it's in New York." I felt my world tilt for a moment. "Oh, wow. That's amazing, Em. Congratulations." She bit her lip. "There's more. They said, they said there might be an opening in their tech department. If you're interested." I stared at her, processing what she was saying. Are you asking me to move to New York with you?" Emily nodded, looking nervous. "I know it's a big ask, and if you're not ready, I understand. But I love you, Nate, and I think we could build an amazing life together in New York." I sat there for a moment, thinking about everything that had happened over the past year. The pain, the growth, the unexpected joy I'd found with Emily. Finally, I smiled. "Well, I hear New York's got some great street photography opportunities." Emily's face lit up. "Is that a yes?" I pulled her close, kissing her deeply. "That's a hell yes." As we started planning our move, I couldn't help but marvel at how life had turned out. A year ago, I thought my world had ended. Now, I was embarking on a new adventure with a woman who understood and supported me in ways I never thought possible. I opened my laptop, starting a new blog post. Life has a funny way of surprising you. Sometimes, what feels like an ending is really just the beginning of something beautiful. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.